I restarted a woman's heart while my mom texted me about my brother's wedding venue needs. The ambulance driver part 1. The text. The compressions were working. I could feel the patient's chest yield under my palms in that familiar rhythm, 100 beats per minute, 2 inches deep, watching the monitor for any sign of electrical activity returning to a heart that had been silent for 8 minutes. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. Mrs. Delgado, 73 years old, collapsed in her kitchen while making breakfast for her husband of 52 years. He was standing outside the ambulance right now, hand shaking, watched over by a neighbor who'd heard him screaming for help. Another buzz. Charging to 200, my partner Marcus called out, defibrillator paddles ready. Clear. The shock made her body jump. I went right back to compressions, counting in my head, watching the monitor. Nothing. Still asystole. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Someone really wants to talk to you, Marcus said. Not now. We got a pulse back on the 4th shock. Weak, thready, but there. I could have cried. You never get used to it, that moment when the heart remembers how to beat. We loaded her into the ambulance, and I finally checked my phone while Marcus drove. For texts from my mother. Your brother needs an answer about borrowing the house for the wedding. He can't wait forever, Daniel. You need to give him an answer by the end of your shift. Don't ignore me. Family is important. I stared at those texts while Mrs. Delgado's oxygen saturation numbers stabilized on the monitor beside me. I just pulled a woman back from death, and my mother was texting me about my brother's wedding venue needs. And here's the thing that embarrasses me to admit. My first thought wasn't anger. It was, how do I make this work? 28 years of conditioning is hard to undo. Update 1. The measurements. I need to explain something about my family before this story will make sense. My brother Tyler is 3 years younger than me. He's a personal fitness trainer with 47,000 Instagram followers. He makes workout videos, sells personalized meal plans, and, according to my parents, inspires people to transform their bodies. He drives a leased BMW. He wears watches that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. He has perfect teeth because my parents paid for his braces twice when he didn't wear his retainer. I'm a paramedic. I've been doing this for 10 years, since I was 18. I work 24-hour shifts in the back of an ambulance responding to the worst moments of people's lives. I've delivered babies in gas station parking lots, performed emergency tracheotomies with makeshift equipment, and held more dying hands than I can count. I own a 3-bedroom house in a decent neighborhood because I've lived frugally and worked overtime for years. But to my parents, Tyler is the successful one, and I'm the ambulance driver. I'm not exaggerating. Those are their actual words. At every family gathering, Tyler gets introduced as our son, the fitness entrepreneur. I get introduced as Daniel, he drives an ambulance. When Tyler started dating Kaylee 2 years ago, my mother told her all about his growing business empire. About me, she said, Daniel has a job with the city. Stable, you know. Not exciting, but stable. So when my mother started texting me during a cardiac arrest about letting Tyler use my house for his wedding, I didn't immediately think that's insane and entitled. I thought I should probably say yes because Tyler's wedding is important and my house is just sitting there when I'm at work anyway. That's what a lifetime of being the less impressive sibling does to you. It rewires your brain to believe that your needs are inherently less valid. I got home from that 24-hour shift at 8 a.m., exhausted in a way that people who work desk jobs will never understand. Not just physically tired, emotionally gutted. We'd lost a patient on the last call. A 45-year-old father of 3, massive stroke, nothing we could do. I'd had to tell his wife. She'd collapsed against me, sobbing, and I'd held her while her children stood in the doorway of their living room watching their mother fall apart. I wanted a shower, a beer, and 12 hours of sleep. Instead, I found Tyler's Porsche in my driveway, and Tyler and Kaylee inside my house, measuring my living room. Finally, Tyler said when I walked in, as if I'd been keeping him waiting instead of, working. Kay and I were just figuring out the layout for the ceremony. We're thinking the arch goes right here by the windows, great natural light, and then guests can flow through to the backyard for the reception. I stood in my own entryway, still wearing my uniform, still smelling like hospital and sweat and death, and watched my brother's fiancée hold a tape measure against my wall. How did you get in? I asked. Mom gave us her emergency key. She said you'd be fine with it. Tyler looked at his phone. Okay, so the ceremony space looks like it can hold maybe 150 if we do rows of chairs, but we'll need a tent in the backyard for the remaining 50. The caterers are going to need access to your kitchen, obviously. Tyler. I held up my hand. I haven't said yes yet. He looked at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. But Mom said. Mom asked. I haven't answered. Kaylee stepped back, looking uncomfortable. Good. Someone should. Well, what's there to think about? Tyler asked. You have the space, you're never here anyway because of your job, and venues are insanely expensive. You'd really make us pay 20 grand for a venue when your house is sitting here empty. I thought about the father of 3 I just lost. About his wife collapsing against me. About the shower and beer and sleep I needed before I could feel human again. I just got off a 24-hour shift, I said quietly. I need to sleep. So sleep. We're just measuring. And while we're on the subject, Tyler gestured toward the hallway leading to my finished basement. We were thinking that could work as our spot for the first year. Just until we save up for a place of our own. Kay's got student loans, my business is scaling up, it makes sense. Mom already talked to a contractor about converting it into a proper living space. She did what? A contractor, Tyler repeated, slowly, like I was stupid. To give estimates on the basement renovation. I mean, it's pretty basic down there right now. Needs a kitchenette, definitely a bathroom upgrade, maybe soundproofing. You want to renovate my basement. Where I live. For free. To live there. Also for free. Tyler's face shifted from confusion to annoyance. You know what, Dan? You look tired. I get it. Your job is, he waved vaguely, whatever. Driving people around is probably tiring. But this is my wedding. This is the biggest day of my life. And you're acting like me asking for a small favor is some huge inconvenience. Driving people around. That's what he thought I did. Drive people around. I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. Because for 28 years, that was the narrative I'd accepted. That Tyler changed lives through fitness and I just drove people around. Kaylee was watching me. Something flickered in her expression. Concern, maybe, or recognition. I didn't know her well enough to read it. I need to sleep, I repeated. Please leave. Tyler looked like he wanted to argue, but Kaylee put her hand on his arm. Come on. We can finish measuring later. After they left, I stood in my living room for a long time, too tired to move, too wired to sleep. My phone buzzed again. Mom, your father and I are coming over tomorrow with the contractor. Family invests in family, and your brother's wedding is an investment in his future. Please have coffee ready by 10. Update 2. The Instagram post. I slept for 4 hours, woke up in a panic thinking I was late for a shift, remembered I had 3 days off, and then couldn't fall back asleep because my brain wouldn't stop circling around my family's expectations. At 10 a.m. sharp, my parents arrived with a man named Rick who handed me a business card identifying him as a residential renovation specialist. Daniel, good you're up, my mother said, breezing past me into my house. Rick needs to look at the basement. Your father and I were thinking we could split the renovation costs with you. Isn't that generous? We'll cover 40%, you cover 60%, and Tyler and Kaylee contribute by being here to oversee the work. I never agreed to any of this, I said. My father clapped me on the shoulder. Don't be difficult, son. Your brother's getting married. It's a big deal. Bigger than anything you've got going on. Bigger than anything I've got going on. I thought about Mrs. Delgado, probably waking up in the ICU right now, alive because I knew how to restart her heart. I thought about the father of 3 who wasn't alive, whose wife I'd held while she sobbed. Dad, I had to tell a woman her husband died 2 days ago. I held her while she cried in front of her kids. I performed CPR on people whose hearts have stopped. How is Tyler's wedding bigger than that? My father looked at me with something like pity. Daniel, I know you think your job is important. I know it's important. But let's be realistic. Tyler inspires thousands of people every day. He's building something. You're fine, you help people, but anyone can do what you do. It's not like you're a doctor. You just transport people to doctors. Just transport people. Rick the contractor cleared his throat awkwardly. Should I come back another time? No, my mother said, shooting me a look. Go ahead and measure the basement. Daniel, please stop making this difficult. Your brother deserves support from his family. I let Rick go downstairs because I didn't have the energy to fight. I stood in my kitchen drinking coffee that my mother had made in my coffee maker, listening to her plan a wedding in a house I owned, for a brother who thought I just drove people around. And I still didn't say no. Because somewhere deep in my conditioning, I still believed that my parents were right, that Tyler's wedding, Tyler's future, Tyler's Instagram followers were all more important than the work I did every single day to keep people alive. The breaking point came 3 days later. I was back at work, 12 hours into a shift, taking a rare break in the station when my phone started ringing. Unknown number. I answered, thinking it might be related to a patient. Hi, is this the event coordinator for the Williams estate? The what? The Williams estate. We saw the post about the wedding venue and wanted to inquire about booking for our daughter's quinceañera next spring. I hung up, confused. Then my phone rang again. Another unknown number. Hello, I'm calling about venue availability. I hung up, opened Instagram, searched Tyler's fiancée's name, and there it was. A photo of my house, with the caption, "So excited to announce we'll be getting married at this gorgeous family estate. Thank you to Tyler's brother for letting us use this stunning venue. Can't wait to start our married life here too. House with garden ring red heart, #family estate, #wedding venue, #newlywed nest." She'd tagged my address. My phone rang again. A wedding florist this time. Then a caterer. Then someone asking about venue rental fees. I called Tyler. "Hey bro, what's up? I'm about to film a workout." Tyler. Kaylee posted my address on Instagram. Called my house a wedding venue. People are calling me asking to book events here. A pause. Then a laugh. An actual laugh. Oh man, that blew up faster than we thought. Kay's got like 20,000 followers. She was so excited to share. What's the problem? Tell them it's not available, obviously. The problem is that my address is on the internet now. The problem is people think I run an event venue. The problem is I'm at work and I can't. Dude, chill. You're never home anyway because of your ambulance job. What do you care if people call? There it was again. Your ambulance job. Like I sold hot dogs at a baseball stadium instead of keeping human beings alive. I hung up on him. That night, I told my mother, no wedding at my house. No living in my basement. The answer was no. Update 3. The meltdown. The family dinner was scheduled for that Sunday, and I knew it would be bad. I just didn't know how bad. My parents' house. Tyler and Kaylee were already there when I arrived. So were my aunt and uncle, my grandmother, 2 of my cousins, an audience I realized that my mother had assembled deliberately. "Daniel," my mother said as I walked in, her voice tight with controlled fury, "your father and I heard about your decision. We'd like you to explain to the family why you're refusing to support your brother's wedding." "Mom. No. We're having this conversation now." She turned to the assembled relatives. "Daniel has decided that his empty house is too precious to share with his only brother on the most important day of his life." Tyler stood up. "Yeah, I'd love to hear the explanation. Because I've been nothing but supportive of your weird ambulance obsession for years, and the one time I asked for something." "You didn't ask," I interrupted. "You assumed. You showed up at my house without permission, measured rooms, planned to renovate my basement, posted my address on social media. Because I thought you'd be happy to help. Because that's what brothers do. When have you ever helped me, Tyler? When have you ever supported what I do?" He laughed, incredulous. "Support what? You drive people to hospitals. That's not exactly a calling, Dan. It's a job you fell into because you weren't smart enough for med school." The room went silent. My grandmother looked down at her hands. My aunt coughed uncomfortably. I stood there, absorbing the hit, and realized something. He actually believed it. Tyler actually believed that my decade of emergency medicine, my countless saved lives, my literal hands-on heart resuscitations of dying human beings, all of it was falling into a job because I wasn't good enough for something better. "Tyler," Kaylee said quietly, "that's not." "No, Kay, I'm tired of tiptoeing around this." Tyler was on a roll now, his face red, his carefully cultivated influencer charm completely gone. "Dan's been jealous of me for years. Jealous that I built something, that I have followers, that people actually care about what I do. And now when I need one thing from him, one thing, he says no because he's petty and selfish and—" "His job is worth more than yours," Kaylee said. Everyone stopped. Kaylee was standing now, arms crossed, looking at Tyler with an expression I couldn't quite read. "I need to talk to Daniel. Alone. Kay. Now." Update 4. The nurse. We stood in my parents' backyard, away from the windows, away from the family still frozen in shock inside. Kaylee was an ER nurse. I knew this peripherally, we discussed it once at a family barbecue, but I'd never really thought about what it meant. What she saw every day. What she understood that my family didn't. I'm sorry, she said. I had no idea they treated you like this. It's how it's always been. That doesn't make it okay. She was pacing, agitated. When I met Tyler, I thought his family was just proud of him. Which is fine. But this, she gestured toward the house, this dismissal of what you do, this entitlement to your home, your life, your space, I didn't see it until now. You work in the ER. You've seen what I do. I've seen it. I've watched paramedics bring in patients they've literally dragged back from death. I've seen you guys perform miracles in the back of ambulances with limited equipment and no backup. And your family thinks you drive people around? She shook her head. That's insane. It's what Tyler said. Tyler's wrong. And he needs to understand exactly how wrong. She told me her plan. She was going to make Tyler sit down and actually learn what a paramedic does. Not from me, he wouldn't hear it from me, but from a ride-along with another unit. She was going to make him see the trauma, the pressure, the life-or-death decisions that happen in the back of an ambulance. And if he won't do it? I asked. Then I'm not marrying someone who can't recognize real heroism when it's standing in front of him. She went back inside. I heard raised voices, Tyler's, then Kaylee's, then my mother's. Eventually, Tyler came outside, looking shell-shocked. Kay says I have to go on a ride-along with paramedics, he said. Or she's calling off the wedding. I didn't say anything. She says I don't understand what you do. That I've been, he swallowed, disrespectful. That I need to actually see it before I can understand. Do you want to? He looked at me for a long moment. I don't know. I thought I knew what you did. Driving people to hospitals. Keeping them calm. Basic stuff. It's not basic. I'm starting to get that. He ran his hands through his hair. I don't want to lose Kay. So, I'll do it. The ride-along. Whatever. He didn't sound convinced. But he sounded scared of losing Kaylee, and for now, that was enough. Update 5. The ride-along. Tyler did the ride-along 3 weeks later. Not with my unit. Kaylee specifically arranged it with a different crew so he wouldn't feel like I was watching him. They picked a busy Friday night, the kind of shift where calls come in back-to-back and there's no time to think. I didn't hear anything until almost midnight. My phone rang. Tyler's number. His voice was shaking. Dan. I need to. Can I come over? He showed up at my house 20 minutes later. His face was pale. His hands trembled when he sat down at my kitchen table. There was a kid, he said. A little boy. Maybe 4 years old. He was choking on a grape and his mom was screaming and I thought he was going to die right there. And the paramedics, they did this thing, like, they got him to cough it up, and he started crying, and his mom, Tyler's voice broke. His mom was holding him and crying and thanking them and I threw up. In the ambulance. Like a complete. He put his head in his hands. And that was just one call. They did like 8 more after that. A car accident, a stroke, some guy having a heart attack at a bar, and they were just calm the whole time. Like it was normal. And I realized, he looked up at me, eyes wet. This is what you do. Every shift. This level of horror, and you just handle it. And I've been calling you an ambulance driver like you're some kind of taxi service. I didn't say anything. I let him sit with it. I thought I changed lives, Tyler said quietly. That's what I tell myself. That I help people transform their bodies, that I inspire them. And that's not nothing. But you, he shook his head. That little boy is alive because those paramedics knew exactly what to do. His mom gets to have him for his 5th birthday, his 10th, his graduation, because of what you guys do. And I've been treating you like your job is less than mine. It's what Mom and Dad believe. I know. And I just accepted it. Because it was easier. Because it meant I was the successful one and you were just, he stopped. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Dan. I've been an asshole for years and I didn't even see it. Here's what I learned in that moment. Tyler wasn't a bad person. He was a person who'd never been confronted with the weight of what I did, who'd absorbed our parents' hierarchy without question, who'd built his identity on being the impressive Williams brother while I was the other one. The ride-along broke something in him. Or maybe it built something. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. The wedding, he said. We're not doing it at your house. Kay already found a venue. It's within our budget. We can afford it. And we're not living in your basement. That was, God, that was so entitled. I can't believe I thought that was okay. Mom and Dad will be disappointed. Yeah, well. He almost smiled. Maybe it's time I stopped letting them decide what's impressive. Part 6. The Wedding. Tyler's wedding was 3 months later. Modest venue, maybe 60 guests instead of 200, a buffet instead of a 5-course meal. Kaylee's idea, mostly. She wanted something meaningful, not extravagant. My parents complained. Of course they did. But Tyler held firm, and Kaylee held firmer, and eventually they accepted that this was the wedding happening, take it or leave it. The ceremony was beautiful. Short, simple, honest. Tyler cried when Kaylee walked down the aisle. I stood next to him as his best man, a role he'd asked me to fill 2 weeks after the ride-along, voice shaking, like he wasn't sure I'd say yes. I said yes. Then came the speeches. Tyler took the microphone, looked out at the crowd, and said, "I want to tell you about the moment I realized I'd been wrong about something important. A few months ago, I went on a ride-along with a paramedic crew. It wasn't my brother Dan's crew, he's a paramedic, in case you didn't know, because I spent most of my life barely acknowledging what he did." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. My parents' smiles froze. I watched those paramedics save a little boy who was choking. I watched them respond to car accidents and heart attacks and strokes. I watched them make life-or-death decisions in seconds, with no backup, no safety net, just their training and their instincts. And I threw up afterward because I couldn't handle what I'd seen. He paused, collecting himself. I used to think I changed lives. That's what I told myself about my fitness career, that I inspired people, transformed bodies, made a difference. And maybe I do. But here's what I realized that night. The person who saves your life in the worst moment is worth more than the person who shows you how to do a bicep curl. I felt tears prick my eyes. I didn't let them fall. My brother Dan has spent 10 years running into emergencies that would break most people. He's held dying patients, delivered babies, restarted hearts. He does it for a fraction of what he's worth, and he does it without asking for praise or recognition. And I spent years treating him like his work didn't matter because our parents, he stopped, looked at Mom and Dad, then away. Because I bought into a narrative that was wrong. He raised his glass. To Daniel. My brother. The person who actually saves lives. I'm proud of you, even though I was too stupid to say it for way too long. Aftermath. My parents still don't fully get it. At family gatherings, they still introduce Tyler with his full fitness entrepreneur credentials. They still introduce me as Daniel, he works for the city. The hierarchy hasn't shifted in their minds, probably never will. But Tyler gets it now. He started using his platform differently after the wedding. Posts about first responders. Fundraisers for EMS equipment. Interviews with paramedics and EMTs and firefighters. His followers are still there for the fitness content, but now they're learning about the people who show up when everything goes wrong. He calls me regularly now. Real calls, not just group chat check-ins. He asks about my shifts, actually listens when I tell him about the hard ones, sends me gear he finds online that he thinks might be useful. It's awkward sometimes. We're learning how to be brothers after years of not really knowing each other. Kaylee and I have become friends. She invites me over for dinner when I have days off. We swap stories from the ER and the ambulance, gallows humor that only people in our line of work understand. She told me once that threatening to cancel the wedding was the hardest thing she'd ever done, but she couldn't marry someone who didn't recognize real value when he saw it. I work with paramedics every day, she said. If Tyler couldn't see what you do, what would he think about my colleagues? About my work? I needed to know he could grow. He grew. Slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely. The lesson. Here's what I learned about family and worth. Some people will never value what you do until they're the one who needs you to do it. My parents still think fitness training is more impressive than emergency medicine because they've never needed emergency medicine. That's the privilege of never facing a real crisis. You get to pretend the people who handle crises aren't that important. But here's what I wish I'd understood earlier. I spent years trying to make my family see that saving lives matters. I showed them news articles about calls I'd run. I explained the medical procedures I performed. I described the patients I'd saved. Nothing worked. Because they didn't need to understand, they needed me to want what they wanted, which was a job they could brag about at dinner parties. The real lesson. Stop trying to translate the value of your work into terms that people who don't do your work can understand. A paramedic's worth isn't measured in Instagram followers or gym memberships. It's measured in the fact that someone's daughter is alive today because I knew what to do when her heart stopped. My brother needed to see a child choking, needed to feel that helpless terror of watching someone die right in front of you, before he could understand that what I do every shift, he couldn't do for 5 minutes. That's not a criticism of him. Most people couldn't. That's why it matters that some of us can. Here's the hard truth. My brother respected me after consequences. His fiancée threatening to cancel the wedding unless he examined his values was the consequence. Seeing real trauma was the consequence. He didn't change his mind through my explaining, he changed it through his experiencing. What I wish someone had told me years ago, the people who dismiss your work are usually the people who've never needed it. And that's okay. You're not doing the work for them. If you're in a profession that people don't understand until they need it, whether you're a paramedic, a social worker, a teacher, a mental health counselor, or any role where the impact isn't immediately visible, know this: your work matters whether or not your family can see it. The people you help see it. That's enough. My brother and I have a real relationship now. Not because I convinced him I was valuable, because his fiancée forced him to look at what value actually means. Sometimes the people who love us need someone else to tell them we matter. That's humbling, but it's real. My parents still don't get it. They still talk about Tyler's growing fitness empire, with more pride than my decade in emergency medicine. I used to let that hollow me out. Now I just think about the grandmother whose heart I restarted last Tuesday. She's having coffee with her grandkids this morning because I knew what to do. Which matters more, my parents' approval or that grandmother's heartbeat? I know my answer. And I've stopped needing my parents to agree with it. One last thing, Tyler's wedding speech changed something. Not with my parents, but with extended family, with friends, with people who'd never really thought about what first responders do. Sometimes the validation doesn't come from the people you expect. Sometimes it comes from the people who are actually paying attention. And sometimes, the person who dismissed you the most becomes your biggest advocate. That's not the lesson I expected. But it's the one I got. Mother-in-law fed my allergic child peanuts to prove it was fake. What happened next changed everything. Posted to r/justnamil. I'm writing this from a place I never thought I'd be. Not physically, I'm at my kitchen table, coffee getting cold beside me, but emotionally. Mentally. 3 years ago, I was certain I knew how this story would end. I was wrong about everything. I need to tell the whole story. Not just the beginning, which you've probably seen versions of 100 times on this subreddit. The whole thing. Because what happened after? I still don't fully understand it myself. The night everything changed. The fluorescent lights in the emergency room had that particular quality that makes everything look worse than it already is. I was holding my daughter's hand, her tiny fingers, still so impossibly small at 5 years old, and watching the monitors like they were the only thing keeping me tethered to this world. Her face was still swollen. Her lips, which had ballooned to twice their size, were slowly returning to normal. The epinephrine was doing its job. The doctors had already told me she was going to be okay. But I couldn't stop shaking. I'm a pediatric nurse. I've worked in this hospital for 8 years. I've seen anaphylaxis more times than I can count. I've administered EpiPens, called codes, watched tiny bodies fight for their lives. I thought I understood what it meant when parents sat where I was sitting now. I understood nothing. Because when it's your child, when it's your baby, her throat closing, her eyes panicking, her small voice rasping, "Mommy, I can't breathe," all that training becomes noise. White noise. The only thing that exists is the terror, pure and primal, that you might be watching your child die. The EpiPen. I'd grabbed it from my purse with hands that somehow remembered what to do even as my brain screamed. The call to 911. My voice, steady and clinical, rattling off symptoms and our location while inside I was falling apart. The ambulance. The sirens. The 37 minutes. I counted every one, between when my daughter took a bite of that cookie and when the doctors told me she was stable. The doctor who came to update me was someone I'd worked with for years. Dr. Patel. She put her hand on my shoulder and said, "Another few minutes, and we'd be having a very different conversation." I nodded. I knew exactly what different conversation meant. I'd been present for those conversations. I'd held the hands of parents who received them. My daughter was asleep now, finally, her small chest rising and falling in the rhythm that meant everything was okay. And as I sat there watching her breathe, I thought about how we got here. I thought about the cookie. I thought about my mother-in-law. The dinner. The family dinner had started like every other family dinner at my mother-in-law's house. The same carefully set table with the china she only used for special occasions, which somehow included every time we came over. The same passive-aggressive comments about how we didn't visit enough. The same tension that hummed beneath every conversation like a frequency only I could hear. My mother-in-law and I had never been close. Not hostile, exactly, but not close. She was from a different generation, a different world. She'd raised 3 children in a time when parenting was apparently simpler, when kids just played outside and ate whatever was put in front of them and turned out fine. She loved saying that. We turned out fine. As if survival was the only metric that mattered. The peanut allergy had been a point of contention since my daughter was 18 months old. The allergist had been clear: severe peanut allergy, IgA levels through the roof, strict avoidance necessary. We'd been given EpiPens, emergency action plans, the whole protocol. I'd spent months learning to read every label, interrogate every restaurant, decline every homemade treat whose ingredients I couldn't verify. My mother-in-law had never believed it. In my day, we didn't have all these allergies, she'd say, waving her hand dismissively. Kids ate peanut butter sandwiches every day. This is all in your head. Millennial parenting paranoia, she'd called it once, when she thought I couldn't hear. Making the poor child afraid of food. I'd tried everything. I'd shown her the allergy test results. I'd sent her articles from the Mayo Clinic, from the American Academy of Pediatrics. I'd explained the science, how the immune system works, what anaphylaxis actually means, why just a little bit could be fatal. She'd nod politely. She'd say she understood. And then, the next time we visited, she'd make comments about how my daughter couldn't even have a normal birthday party, and how we're raising a generation of hypochondriacs. So I adapted. I brought our own food to every gathering, every holiday, every birthday, every Sunday dinner. A cooler bag with safe snacks, safe meals, safe desserts. My daughter knew the drill. She knew she could only eat what Mommy brought. That night, I'd done the same thing. I'd brought pasta salad, fruit, and homemade brownies that I knew were safe. I'd reminded my mother-in-law, again, about the allergy. I'd watched my daughter like I always did. But I'd gone to the bathroom. 3 minutes. Maybe 4. I'd left my daughter at the table with my husband, my father-in-law, my brother-in-law. Safe. Supervised. I came back to find her holding a cookie. Mommy, look. Grandma made special cookies just for me. My heart stopped. I looked at my mother-in-law, who had this expression on her face, this satisfied, almost smug expression that I will never, ever forget. What's in the cookies? My voice was calm. Controlled. The nurse voice. Oh, for heaven's sake, it's just butter cookies. Flour, sugar, butter. Nothing harmful. Grandma, what's in this cookie? My daughter asked it innocently. She'd been trained to ask. She always asked. Just yummy things, sweetheart. Eat up. I crossed the room and took the cookie from my daughter's hand. I looked at it. Sniffed it. And that's when I smelled it, faint but unmistakable. Peanut butter. Did you put peanut butter in these? My mother-in-law rolled her eyes. Just a tiny amount. Less than a teaspoon in the whole batch. I'm proving a point. She'll be fine. I've replayed that moment 1,000 times. The eye roll. The dismissive tone. The words, proving a point. As if my daughter's life was a debate to be won. My daughter had already eaten half the cookie. Within 60 seconds, she was scratching her throat. Within 90 seconds, her lips were swelling. Within 2 minutes, she was struggling to breathe. I grabbed my purse. The EpiPen. My fingers found it automatically. Muscle memory from a nightmare I'd trained for but never actually lived. I jabbed it into her thigh, held it there, counting the seconds. Call 911. I screamed. My husband was frozen. My father-in-law was frozen. My mother-in-law was saying something, she's fine, she's being dramatic. But her voice was getting higher, thinner, as she watched her granddaughter's face transform into something unrecognizable. I called 911 myself, one hand on my daughter, the other holding the phone. I gave them the information in clear, clinical terms. 5-year-old female, anaphylactic reaction, EpiPen administered, severe peanut allergy, accidental ingestion. But it wasn't accidental. It was intentional. My mother-in-law had intentionally poisoned my daughter to prove a point. The hospital hallway. I don't remember the ambulance ride. I don't remember the initial triage. My brain has blocked it out, replaced it with static and fragments. I remember the hospital hallway, though. I remember every detail. My mother-in-law was sitting in one of those plastic chairs, her face gray. My husband was standing between us, his hands raised, saying something about needing to stay calm and focus on what matters. And I was screaming. I don't scream. I am not a screamer. I am composed, professional, controlled. I have held dying children and spoken to their parents with compassion. I have delivered devastating news without breaking. I am good at compartmentalizing. But in that hallway, I was a mother whose child almost died because a grown woman decided her opinion mattered more than medical science. She could have died. I heard my own voice, raw and unrecognizable. She almost died. Do you understand what you did? My mother-in-law was crying. I didn't think. No. You didn't think. You never think. You just decided you knew better than every doctor, every allergist, every medical professional who has ever tested her. You decided that your ignorance was more valid than my daughter's life. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Sorry. You're sorry. My daughter stopped breathing. Her throat closed. She could have died in your dining room, surrounded by people who were too stunned to help, because you wanted to prove a point. My husband tried to take my arm. Let's take this somewhere. I pulled away from him. Don't you dare try to manage this. Your mother poisoned our daughter. She did it on purpose. She looked me in the eye and told me there was nothing dangerous in those cookies while our child was eating them. I turned back to my mother-in-law. I'm pressing charges. I want you to know that. I'm pressing charges, and I never want to see you again. You will never be in the same room as my daughter. You will never speak to her, never call her, never send her a gift. You are dead to this family. Do you understand me? She was sobbing now, ugly, heaving sobs. Please. Please, I never meant. I didn't know. I'm so sorry. You didn't know. You didn't know. I told you. I told you 100 times. I showed you the test results. I explained what would happen. And you decided I was lying. You decided a 5-year-old was capable of faking an allergy for attention. What kind of person does that? I walked away. I walked back to my daughter's room and I sat beside her bed and I held her hand and I didn't let go until morning. Update 1. 1 week later. I'm posting this update because people have been asking, and because I need to process. My daughter is home. She's okay. She has nightmares sometimes. She wakes up crying that she can't breathe, but physically, she's recovered. Kids are resilient. That's what everyone keeps telling me. I am not resilient. I am breaking. I consulted with a lawyer. Pressing charges is complicated. What my mother-in-law did could potentially qualify as reckless endangerment or child abuse, but proving intent is difficult. She didn't mean to harm her granddaughter. She genuinely believed nothing would happen. Stupidity isn't always criminal. I'm still considering my options. We've gone complete no contact. My husband has been sleeping on the couch, not because I kicked him out, but because he can't seem to be near me without the weight of what happened crushing him. He's stuck between his mother and his wife, and he's handling it badly. He's tried to defend her. Not excuse what she did, but explain it. She really didn't understand, he said once. She's from a different generation. She genuinely thought. I don't care what she thought. I care what she did. He didn't argue after that. Here's what I didn't expect. She's not defending herself. When my husband went to check on her, which I gave him permission to do, against my every instinct, he found her in bed. She hadn't eaten in 3 days. She hadn't showered. She'd apparently not stopped crying since we left the hospital. Part of me thought, good. She should suffer. But another part of me, a part one didn't want to acknowledge, felt something shift. My husband told me that she kept saying, over and over, I almost killed her. I almost killed her. What have I done? Not, I didn't mean to. Not, it wasn't my fault. Not, everyone is overreacting. Just, what have I done? I don't know what to do with that. Update 2. 3 months later. I wasn't going to post again. I thought the story was over. Either I'd press charges and she'd face legal consequences, or we'd stay no contact forever, or some combination of both. But something happened. My mother-in-law checked herself into a residential mental health facility. When my husband told me, I thought it was a manipulation. Some kind of ploy for sympathy. But no, she actually did it. She called her doctor, told them she was having suicidal ideation, and admitted herself voluntarily. She was there for 6 weeks. During that time, she was diagnosed with an anxiety disorder that had apparently been untreated for decades. Her therapist told my husband, and later, with permission, told me, that her need to control, to be right, to dismiss anything that challenged her worldview, it all stemmed from profound, unaddressed anxiety. Admitting that the allergy was real would have meant admitting that her granddaughter was in danger, that the world was dangerous, that things could go wrong despite her best efforts. Her brain couldn't handle that. So it rejected the reality instead. This isn't an excuse. Her therapist was clear about that, and I need to be clear too. Understanding the reason behind behavior doesn't excuse the behavior. My daughter still almost died. That still happened. But it shifted something. When she got out, she enrolled in an allergy education course. Not a pamphlet, not a website, a full course, the kind healthcare workers take. She learned about IgE-mediated reactions, cross-contamination, reading labels, emergency protocols. She got certified in EpiPen administration. She wrote me a letter. It wasn't short. It was 12 pages, handwritten. I still have it. I've read it maybe 100 times. In it, she didn't make excuses. She described what she did in clear, unsparing terms. She acknowledged that she could have killed her granddaughter. She acknowledged that her actions were rooted in arrogance and willful ignorance. She acknowledged that I had every right to never forgive her, to never speak to her again, to pursue every legal option available to me. And then she made a promise. Not a demand, not a request, a promise. That she would spend the rest of her life trying to become someone worthy of trust. That she understood she might never succeed. That she would accept whatever I decided. I am not asking for forgiveness, she wrote. I am not asking for access to my granddaughter. I am only telling you what I am going to do, regardless of whether you ever want to see me again. I am going to become someone who could never do what I did. I read that line so many times the paper got soft. I wanted to hate her forever. It would have been easier. But watching her fall apart, genuinely fall apart, I couldn't unsee that she was human too. I couldn't unsee the genuine horror in her eyes when she finally understood what she'd done. I still hadn't decided anything. I was still so angry. But something was different now. Update 3. 8 months later. My therapist asked me a question that changed everything. What do you need to feel safe? Not what would make things fair. Not what my mother-in-law needed to do. Not what would satisfy my anger. What did I need to feel safe? I sat with that question for weeks. I realized I'd been so focused on punishment, on making sure she understood the magnitude of what she'd done, that I hadn't actually thought about what I needed going forward. What I needed was simple. I needed to know in my bones that my daughter was safe. That what happened would never happen again. That any contact with my mother-in-law wouldn't be a risk to my child's life. When I framed it that way, something shifted. I agreed to a conversation. Just the two of us, in my therapist's office. No husband, no mediator except the therapist. I needed to see her. I needed to look in her eyes and understand whether the change was real. She looked different. Older. Thinner. There was something in her face that wasn't there before, a kind of rawness, like a scab that hadn't fully healed. She didn't try to hug me. She didn't cry. She just sat there and waited for me to speak. I asked her questions. Hard questions. I asked her to describe, in detail, what she did that night and why. I asked her to tell me what she'd learned about allergies. I asked her what she would do differently. I asked her to role-play scenarios. What if my daughter asked her for food? What if someone at a party offered her something? She answered everything. Thoroughly. Correctly. She knew more about allergies now than most people I know. She described cross-contamination protocols. She knew the symptoms of anaphylaxis in order of severity. She knew that, just a little bit, could kill. I was so stupid, she said at one point. I was so arrogant. I thought I knew better than doctors because, she stopped, collected herself. Because admitting you were right would have meant admitting I was a danger to my own granddaughter. My brain couldn't do that. So I convinced myself you were the problem. And now I understand that I was the problem. I was the danger. And I will never stop being sorry for that. I looked at her for a long time. I thought about my daughter. I thought about the hospital hallway. I thought about the letter, the 12 pages, the promise. I'm not ready to forgive you, I said finally. I don't know if I ever will be. What you did, my daughter has nightmares. I have nightmares. Every time she eats something, I think about that cookie. That doesn't go away. I know. But I'm willing to try something. Supervised visits. Short. You will never be alone with her. You will never give her food, any food, ever. You will follow every rule I set without argument. If you violate any of this, even once, we're done forever. She nodded. She was crying now, but quietly. Thank you. Thank you. I won't let you down. I wanted to believe her. I wasn't sure I did yet. But I was willing to try. Update 4. 2 years later. I'm sitting here trying to figure out how to describe where we are now, and I keep coming back to something my therapist said once: forgiveness isn't a moment. It was 1,000 small choices, every day, for months. That's what it's been. 1,000 choices. Every time my mother-in-law has been at an event, I've had to choose to let her stay. Every time she's interacted with my daughter, I've had to choose to trust. Every time I've caught myself softening, I've had to choose whether to let it happen or fight it. And every time, she's proven herself. 2 years of supervised visits. 2 years of never once arguing with a boundary. 2 years of arriving at events with her own EpiPen, of reading ingredient labels out loud, of asking me before offering my daughter even a glass of water. She's become the most careful person about allergies that I've ever met. It's almost overcorrection at this point. She won't bring any food into our house, ever. When she hosts holidays, she has me approve every dish beforehand. She's educated her friends. She's spoken at her church about taking children's allergies seriously. She's become an advocate. Last month, she showed me an email. A woman in her book club had a grandchild with a dairy allergy. This woman had said something dismissive, "Those allergies are so overblown," and my mother-in-law had apparently stopped the entire meeting to explain, in detail, why that kind of thinking was dangerous. She told them about what she'd done. She told them about the hospital. She told them that her granddaughter almost died because she believed exactly what that woman believed. She shared the most shameful moment of her life to educate strangers. I read that email 3 times. I cried. Where we are now. My daughter is 7 now. She's funny and fierce and completely unfazed by her allergy. She carries her own EpiPen in a little pink case, and she tells everyone about it with the kind of matter-of-fact confidence that kids have when adults handle scary things well. She loves her grandmother. That sentence still feels strange to write. After everything that happened, my daughter loves her grandmother. They have tea parties. They read books together. They plant flowers in the garden. Always supervised. Always with rules. But with genuine warmth. My mother-in-law has never once complained about the restrictions. When my daughter asked her once why Mommy always has to be there, my mother-in-law said, "Because Mommy loves you so much, and she's making sure you're always safe." I'm so glad you have a mommy like that. She didn't make herself the victim. She didn't try to undermine me. She supported my boundaries to my daughter's face. That matters. That matters so much. My husband and I went to couples therapy for a year. We had to rebuild something too. Not just my relationship with his mother, but our relationship with each other. He'd been caught in the middle in ways that were unfair to him, and I'd been so consumed by my anger that I hadn't always seen his pain. We're stronger now. Different, but stronger. And my mother-in-law, she's different too. The anxiety treatment changed her in ways beyond just the allergy issue. She's softer now. Less controlling. She asks questions instead of making pronouncements. She says, "I don't know," sometimes, something I don't think I ever heard before the incident. She almost killed my daughter. She also changed completely. Both things are true. I still don't know how to hold them at the same time. Final thoughts. People ask me sometimes if I've forgiven her. I never know how to answer. I've stopped being angry. Most of the time. I've stopped flinching when I see her name on my phone. I've stopped having nightmares about that night. I've watched her earn her way back, inch by painful inch, and I've let myself see it. I've let myself believe that some people can genuinely change when confronted with the consequences of their actions. But forgiveness feels like too simple a word for what's happened. She is not the same person who put peanut butter in those cookies. That person was willfully ignorant, arrogant, certain of her own rightness. That person is gone, destroyed by the horror of what her certainty almost cost. The person who exists now is careful, humble, educated, and remorseful. The person who exists now would never do what the old version did. I believe that completely. But the old version still did what she did. My daughter still almost died. I still held her hand in the emergency room, watching her breathe, terrified that each breath might be the last. That happened. And no amount of change can unhappen it. So I don't know if I've forgiven her. I know that I've let her back into our lives, in a limited and carefully controlled way. I know that I've watched her become someone worthy of that limited trust. I know that my daughter has a relationship with her grandmother that brings them both joy. I know that I'm at peace with my decision. Maybe that's what forgiveness actually is. Not a feeling. Not a moment. Just 1,000 small choices, made over and over, until one day you realize you've built something new. To anyone in a similar situation, I want to be clear about something. My story is not a template. I am not telling you that you should forgive someone who endangered your child. I am not telling you that everyone can change. What I'm telling you is that in my specific case, with my specific mother-in-law, change happened. Real change. Demonstrated over years, not weeks. Verified by consistent action, not just words. If my mother-in-law had made excuses, I would have stayed no contact forever. If she had defended herself, minimized what she did, blamed my overreaction, we would never have spoken again. But she didn't do any of those things. She crumbled. She took responsibility. She did the work. She kept doing the work long after she had any guarantee that it would lead to reconciliation. That mattered. Your situation might be different. The person who hurt you might not be capable of that kind of accountability. They might not have the self-awareness, the resources, or the willingness to change. And if that's the case, no contact is not just acceptable, it's necessary. Protect your child first. Always. But if you find yourself in a situation like mine, if you're watching someone genuinely try to become better, genuinely taking responsibility, genuinely doing the work, I want you to know that it's okay to let your heart soften. It's okay to hold space for both your anger and their growth. It's okay to rebuild something, carefully and slowly, if that's what you want. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't mean you've forgotten what happened. It just means you've decided that this particular story doesn't have to end in permanent estrangement. Some people can change. Not everyone. But some. My mother-in-law is proof of that. And 3 years later, I'm grateful, surprised, complicated, careful, but grateful that I gave her the chance to prove it. TLDR, my mother-in-law put peanut butter in cookies to prove my daughter's allergy was fake. My daughter nearly died. I cut contact and considered pressing charges. But over months, my MEL had a complete breakdown, got mental health treatment, educated herself extensively about allergies, and demonstrated genuine, consistent change. We slowly rebuilt a relationship with strict boundaries. She's now the most careful person about allergies I know. Still complicated. Still careful. But we found a way forward. Edited to add, thank you for all the responses. To those telling me I'm foolish or weak or setting a bad example, I understand your perspective. What she did was unforgivable in the most literal sense. I didn't forgive it. I can't. What I did was choose to move forward, with boundaries, because that's what made sense for my family. Your mileage may vary. Protect your children first, always. But if you find yourself with a genuine case of change, know that it's okay to acknowledge it. That's all. Here's what I learned from watching my mother-in-law become a different person. Some people can change. Not everyone. But some. And recognizing the difference matters. My daughter almost died because a grown woman decided her opinion was worth more than medical science. I held my child's hand in the emergency room, watching her breathe, terrified that each breath might be the last. That happened. No amount of change can unhappen it. I wanted to hate her forever. It would have been easier. Clean villains make clean stories. But watching her fall apart, genuinely fall apart, not performatively, I couldn't unsee that she was human too. I couldn't unsee the horror in her eyes when she finally understood what she'd done. She didn't make excuses. She didn't defend herself. She didn't blame my overreaction or call it an accident. She crumbled. She checked herself into a mental health facility. She got diagnosed with an anxiety disorder that had been warping her thinking for decades, the need to be right, to control, to reject any reality that felt too dangerous to accept. Understanding the reason doesn't excuse the behavior. My therapist was clear about that. But it shifted something. She took an allergy education course, got certified in EpiPen use, wrote me 12 handwritten pages that didn't ask for forgiveness, just promised to become someone who could never do what she did. And then she spent years proving it. Every visit, every boundary, every rule followed without argument. My therapist asked me what I needed to feel safe. Not what would be fair. Not what would satisfy my anger. What I needed. That question changed everything. Forgiveness wasn't a moment. It was 1,000 small choices, every day, for months. Every time I let her stay at an event. Every time I watched her interact with my daughter. Every time I caught myself softening and chose to let it happen instead of fighting it. She's the most careful person about allergies I've ever met now. She won't bring food into our house, ever. She reads labels out loud. She carries her own EpiPen. She told her entire book club about her shame to educate a woman who said allergies were overblown. She shared the worst moment of her life to protect children she'll never meet. I don't know if I've forgiven her. The word feels too simple. What I know is that I've let her back into our lives, carefully, with boundaries that will never fully disappear. I know my daughter loves her grandmother. I know I'm at peace with that. She almost killed my daughter. She also changed completely. Both things are true. I still don't know how to hold them at the same time. But I'm learning. To anyone in a similar situation, this is not a template. Not everyone can change. If the person who hurt you makes excuses, minimizes, defends themselves, stay away forever. Protect your child first. Always. But if you find yourself watching someone genuinely crumble, genuinely take responsibility, genuinely do the work for years without any guarantee it will lead anywhere, know that it's okay to let your heart soften. It's okay to hold space for both your anger and their growth. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't mean you've forgotten. It just means some stories don't have to end the way you expected.